Welcome into another edition of the GigEm247 Sports Podcast. I am Andrew Hattersley, joined by Carter Karels. Carter, it's nice to see you. I feel like we've kind of both been living out of hotel rooms this entire month. I'm back in College Station for State 7-on-7, back in another hotel room, and you just got back from a week and a half in Omaha, and we're certainly going to dive into that run. It's kind of been the talk of the week. Obviously, everything going on with Texas A&M and Jim Schlossnagle, and that's really where our podcast is going to focus on. But welcome back to the Lone Star State. Just how's this kind of week been for you?
Crazy, man. I mean,
Yeah,
I joked with someone, first of all, just Omaha. It was my first time being there, and it was a blast. But once you've been there for more than a week, every day begins to become like the movie Groundhog Day, where you're
yeah,
just stuck in this time loop. You just feel like you're on a different planet kind of thing, and every day is the same and runs together. I wake up on a Friday and think it's a Monday. So like that was just a funny experience. And then, the last few days have obviously been really crazy. So it never ends. Thought, hey man, July's coming and gonna have some time off and have a vacation coming up, but
yeah.
nope, no sleeping for us. It's gonna be a fun next couple days.
No doubt. We got commitment seasons coming now. That you hear dead period for recruiting, and coaches gone on vacation now until SEC Media Day starts. Nope, it's commitment season. Kids are getting closer to decision dates and all that before their senior year, and we're certainly going to have a lot more of that. So if you're not a subscriber, we do have a 50% off flash sale running on the site right now, and would really encourage you to jump on that, because we're going to have plenty more on the recruiting side and a baseball search, a coaching search coming on that front. Let's kind of start there, because like even being here down in College Station around just a bunch of media who's been here, everybody brings up Jim Schlossnagle and what happened this week, and how could you not? He obviously makes the jump less than 24 hours. So to just kind of unpack the week, right? A&M plays for their first national championship in baseball, falls to Tennessee, and a really competitive back and forth series. A&M's 7 outs away from winning their first national championship in program history in baseball. And then less than 24 hours later, watching their coach depart for Texas. And, there was a press conference that was one of the more interesting moments, I think. And you were on hand for that. And we've talked a lot about that. But, departs for Texas, and Wednesday he's being introduced as Texas's head coach, and the entire staff goes with them. Just a really crazy couple of days. Just what did you make of kind of maybe Monday afternoon to Wednesday afternoon, and with the press conference?
Yeah, have a lot of thoughts to unpack for sure. We'll see how long it takes, but I first just want to say, like, I think the why is a lot less important here than the how, right?
Yeah,
Why, like, you can't ever fault somebody for making a move that they feel like is the best for them, whether it's a player in the transfer portal or a coach going to another place. Like if certain things are more important to him, or he didn't like certain things going on at A&M, like that's his choice, right? I think it's the how that really is just crazy here. I mean, we haven't seen much like this. People will try to compare it. Oh, Jimbo did that at FSU and A&M. It's not really like anything, because, not only like him leaving for their biggest rival alone is one thing, but all the other stuff that is coming to light is just like disgusting, quite frankly. Uh, it was very clear, not just, just based on who I've talked to, but I mean, other people are reporting it, that, this was known well before that final game on Monday, that he was planning to take this job at Texas, and that the wheels were in motion for it. And just based off who I've talked to, the players knew it too. I had heard that kind of around the SEC tournament, there was sort of this weird feeling of, what's going on, and just sort of confusion about everything. And the longer it went, the more weird the feelings got. And by the time Monday arrived, that final game 3 of the national championship, everyone in that dugout knew what was going to happen. And you just think about how distracting that is for a team that's competing for its first ever national championship. You're already dealing with a lot of emotions, but to deal with that as well, uh, of course they lost, right? I mean, and you saw it in their play. I'd heard like Sunday they play and they play a pretty bad game, pretty bad in the sense that they had a couple base running errors. They had, some uh, bad timely hitting, and just didn't play crisp whatsoever. And I'd heard that after the game, Schloss usually kind of rips in the team when that happens, but instead he was just kind of subdued and kind of just aloof, and it kind of threw the team off a little bit. And then during the game on Monday, same thing. Gavin Grohovic takes watches ball 4. They call strike 3. Gavin Grohovic kind of loses his mind on the ump, and you look over at Schloss, and it's like nothing happened. Tennessee player spikes his helmet into the ground after sliding home. Schloss doesn't do or say anything about it. It was almost like he wasn't there. And I think everyone had that sense. And me personally, I was there all those 2 weeks in Omaha, and I got the strangest vibe those entire 2 weeks from the coaching staff. It's like their personalities completely changed. I've never been around more just an aloof, distant, distracted kind of feeling. At first, I thought maybe they're just so locked in that they're like kind of weird. But in retrospect, you're like, oh no, these guys knew what they were going to do. And then you hear all the stories about how it unfolded, and it's pretty unsettling. I mean, this is a coaching staff that when they got back on Tuesday to College Station, before anything was announced, before any move was officially made, they were already recruiting A&M players to Texas and telling them, hey, we're going to Texas, come with us. And, if the NCAA ever wanted to do anything about tampering, I can't think of a better example. We know that they won't, but it's textbook tampering, and it's pretty easy to find out that they did. And so, the why to me doesn't matter. Like, obviously, it's not great to move to a rival, but that's his personal decision. That's fine. Just like it was him going from TCU to A&M. But it's the how, right? Not telling any of your players, before, meeting with Chris Del Conte and letting them find out over social media. It's just messed up. Like, and Schloss watching his press conference Wednesday, or I guess that was that Tuesday?
Wednesday. Yep, Wednesday.
Yeah, and it was just lie after lie. I mean, I couldn't believe I know he had to kind of cover his bases, but this notion that, I had no idea this job was going to be open, and I had no idea CDC was going to reach out until after the press conference, and I didn't know that I was going to take it until after I left the team in College Station. I mean, all of it's just false and easily proven to be a lie, right? And so I just think between this and what he did at TCU and just all that's come out, I just don't know how the guy has any credibility anymore, because when you just make a habit of lying and prioritizing success over integrity, I could go on and on, but this is a guy too that it was never a big secret that he's not a great guy, right? I mean, when I first took this job, last February and started covering the baseball team, that was one of the first things I heard is just, hey, this is not a good guy, right? And so it's not really surprising that it went down this way, but it's just kind of shocking that all of it happened, though, I guess, just how bad it was, right? It wasn't surprising that it ended bad, but it was surprising that it was like, wow, and the whole coaching staff knew about it. And wow, you guys are tampering and doing, doing this while your team's on a run to the championship. I don't know. It's just all kind of shocking to me. But anyway, it was, there's a lot of layers to unpack, but overall, just the how of it was pretty crazy.
No doubt. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little more about kind of Jim Schlossnagle and this whole situation, and also look back at that college World Series run. So stick with us, and we'll be right back. Welcome back into the GigEm247 Sports Podcast. I am Andrew Hattersley, joined again by Carter Karels. Carter, there's another layer to kind of unpack in all of this, and I think it goes a little bit, because I think what you were saying before the break is completely fair, and it goes to the how, right? And it goes to the how of, I'm with you. Like, people have different reasons for leaving the job, and he's not going to be the last person to ever leave a job, and you're certainly entitled to leave a job and go wherever you want to go. I think that's something, and it's never going to be clean in sports. Like, it's just always messy. How there's that part is a fair point, that it's never easy to leave a job. It's never smooth. There's always going to be people that disagree with you. But I do think there are situations where it's a little more egregious. And you look at that press conference on Monday night, and I think, Jim Schlossnagle obviously apologized for this at his press conference on Wednesday, but going after Richard Zane from Texas Aggies and being in that press conference. And, it's just one of those things like that. That's another data point, right? That's another point that when you get asked that question. And look, I think the way it was asked and the manner it was asked was very, very fair. It was a fair question at the time, and we had talked earlier on Monday. Hey, we need to start digging around and we need to, we need to ask more questions about this and get to the bottom of this. And that question was I thought appropriate at the time, given everything going on. And to kind of have the response he did, I think just added to the whole situation when less than 12 hours later you're going to Texas. But you were in the room for that question, so what did you kind of make of it?
Well, even before that question was asked, there was a weird vibe with Schloss. I know he had just lost the national championship game, but you could tell something was off with the guy. I mean, I mentioned during the game, all the players could tell that something was off. And after the game was weird. Max Wiener was like sobbing in the dugout. And like, again, yeah, you lost the national championship, but it's like, just with the context of everything, it's like, that's kind of weird, right? And goes to the press conference room. And again, of course, national championship, you lose it, you're very emotional. But I remember there was a part in the press conference where there was a reporter, I'm not going to name names, but he asked a question to Hayden Schott that Schloss didn't like. And I've never seen him like death glare somebody harder. It seemed like he was about to jump out of his seat and punch the guy in the face. So I already knew he was like pretty on edge. And the other interesting, just kind of backstory here is there were multiple people prepared to ask him that question. Like, I had been raising my hand. I raised my hand too late, admittedly. But when I raised my hand, the guy was like, "Oh, sorry, man. Richard's the last question." And I was okay with that because me and a couple other reporters were planning to go out to the hallway afterwards and ask him the question. Now, what answer we would have got, it probably would have been a lot of cuss words in that answer. It probably would have, been kind of like F off, right? But it would have been asked. But it would not have been asked on camera. And I think that's the differentiating factor here is because it was asked on camera, we saw how poorly he handled it. He didn't have to answer it at all. He didn't have to say, oh, yeah, I'm going to Texas, or, oh, yeah, there's a decision to be made. He could have just said, hey, guys, the focus right now I wish would be on this team and what we accomplished. And, we just lost the national championship game, and I wanted our focus to be on how special this team was. And we can talk about that later. That would have been totally fine. But instead, not only does he have to snap back, oh, it was a selfish question, but then he just straight up lies about it. And I've heard some people say, oh, he didn't really lie. He lied. He said, I came to A&M for it to be my last job I take, and that hasn't changed. That's a lie, right? And he did the same thing at TCU, said, I'm not interested in any other job. 2 weeks later, boom, A&M hires him. It's coaching 101, like, don't lie. Don't incriminate yourself and say all this. And that's why, again, you can't trust anything this guy says. I mean, the whole press conference at Texas, it's just lie after lie. And I'm just like, hey, look, I know coaches do this. Like, I know coaches will, I don't have any interest in that job. But it's just the culmination of everything that makes it so much dirtier. And after he got done saying that, what people didn't see, it was off camera, and I mentioned this in the column I wrote about the whole thing. He goes up to Richard Zane and, gives him the what for a second, telling him basically don't talk to me ever again. And he walks off and is just like muttering cuss words to himself and like storms out of the room like just a petulant child. I mean, it was like it was a very fair question. Now, I do think it was funny, and I think A&M fans, one valuable lesson you need to take here is like, hey, don't change your mind based off what the coach ends up doing, because I felt like Richard was getting vilified and just harshly critiqued for what he asked. And then when Schloss left, he became a hero. And it's like, hey, maybe just like, hey, he asked a good question, and it was a question that needed to be asked, and it was a fair question, and it doesn't deserve, this like slander that he got. And I just think that like I don't like how the inconsistency there of like, oh, well, because it ended up being true, I've changed my mind on it. Like, stay consistent and just know that, if that question's being asked, there's probably a reason behind it. That's obviously a pretty intense question to ask after a national championship loss. And so if it's being asked, you probably know that there's truth to what's going on. And so have a little faith. Like, we're covering this team. We know what we're doing. And, he wasn't the only one that was going to ask the question. But kudos to Richard. He dealt with so much hate during that night. And I know, I talked with him about it, and like, he's a great guy, and he didn't deserve any of that. He's done a great job covering the team all year as their baseball writer. And so, like, I just seeing all that, I was like, golly, man, like, these people need to realize that this is like part of the job, and that if he didn't ask that, a bunch of other people would have asked it too. And so that was just kind of frustrating from that perspective. But overall, Schloss handled it poorly, and he is getting crushed. I mean, it's brought so much national attention. You've seen First Take and other shows on ESPN talk about it. I saw Ken Rosenthal did a hit on it. It has brought a lot of bad attention to Schloss. I found it interesting how in his introductory presser, he apologized to Richard, but then he kind of follows it up with an excuse saying like, hey, I was only thinking about my players during that moment, and I go only think about my players. And I'm like, first of all, that's not true. You were thinking about the Texas job. And second of all, that doesn't excuse the behavior. And then third of all, he didn't apologize for confronting him at the end. He only apologized for the thing he did on camera. And anyway, just the whole thing was handled very poorly. And you would have thought that he would have learned after the TCU thing that he did, that he would have done things differently. But the fact that it's the same old song and dance, not telling the team, letting this go on for, days and days and not addressing it, and then, handling the question poorly. I'm just saying, like I've been telling Texas people, like, hey man, he's going to be a great coach. He's going to, win a lot of games, but the credibility would be something I would be concerned about, because if he's willing to do this 2 times in a row, multiple times, it's only a matter of time before it happens again.
Moving forward to looking ahead to the future for Texas A&M, because I think obviously the future is really, really bright for this program. And, it's easy to kind of get lost in the shuffle that this team was 7 outs away from playing for a national championship game. And it's, in the age of the transfer portal, you never know what a team's going to look like from year to year, especially when there's a coaching change. But you look at what the foundation this program has to build off of, and Shane Sadeo announcing he's going to come back for another year. That's a great start. And some of the others that have also come out and said the same thing. There's a foundation to build off moving forward, and it's a bright one. And, this is going to be a very coveted job, and there's going to be a lot of interest in it. I know you've been making a lot of calls about this. Just what's been your early sense on this job, and what's been the interest in this job?
Well, I want to answer that. I also want to talk about portal stuff. So I'll talk about the job first. I don't think A&M was, obviously it was like shocking in the moment, but I don't think they were that surprised that this all went down. I think they were actually pretty prepared for it. I do think the timing of it was brutal, because not only you can't just say, hey, we're going to fire Schloss like during the Super Regional, or hey, we're going to come up with a coaching search committee. They had to work toward trying to keep him, but they were prepared and had kind of the knowledge of, hey, this may happen. And so, they have a list of coaches for sure that, they've thought about, they've talked to. And I think, by the end of this weekend, I think they'll have a coach named. And I think, Monday might be a day where they introduce the coach, because next Tuesday is when the transfer portal closes. And it's just a tough time, because, the timing of it, you only got a couple days if you hire a Monday to get some of those guys back and also get other guys. But just sort of the names I've heard so far, just to kind of run through a quick list. Brian O'Connor, obviously out of Virginia, was a big name that I've heard that obviously has done an amazing job at Virginia. You'd argue that he's been a lot more, or not a lot, but just he's been more successful than Schlossnagle. Won a College World Series, been to a good handful of them. Link Jarrett is another one out of Florida State, was also at Notre Dame previously. I actually was able to cover him a little bit at Notre Dame and Florida State when I was there. The challenge with him, though, he went to Florida State, he played there, he's a legend there. That was a dream job for him. And just based off what I know about him, he's not as money motivated as some coaches might be. A&M would obviously be able to probably double his salary. But the big motivators for him, he's got a lot of family in Tallahassee. He's got some personal stuff going on in his life that will make him want to probably stay in Tallahassee. And I just think that it's going to be really hard to take him away from there unless, maybe he wins a national championship for them. It's kind of like a LeBron in Cleveland situation. Can you really get LeBron out of Cleveland? But, if he wins a national championship, then, maybe so. So I think that's going to be hard. I do know that the one selling point for him would be the facilities aspect. Florida State has absolutely dog crap facilities, and they don't have much support at when it comes to baseball relative to some of these major programs. And he knows it, and he's been pushing for it. And A&M, meanwhile, can snap their fingers and get $80 million for a stadium renovation that some would argue they don't really need that badly relative to some of the other things that they need to do. So I think it could be hard to lure him away, but this stadium renovation and all the facilities and NIL money that he'll have and just doubled of the salary, I think that could be a selling point for him. The DBU head coach, Dan Hefner, obviously is another name to know. North Carolina head coach, Scott Forbes, Wake Forest's Tom Walter. Those are kind of the major names. You've heard about a couple guys from the SEC. Kevin O'Sullivan, obviously from Florida, is a name I've heard some people mention. I find it hard to believe that O'Sullivan would not just leave Florida, but that he'd be hired at A&M. Just from the rumblings that I've heard, that LSU looked into hiring him a couple cycles ago, hired a private investigator, looked into his shady past, right, and didn't like what they saw, so they didn't hire him. So
at the beginning of the College World Series too. Like, you look at that and that whole situation,
right?
Just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
It's hard, right? I think maybe a couple years ago, when you're coming off of, I think they lost in the regionals and had a couple disappointing seasons in a row. Maybe it was the timing of that and just, hey, is he worth it? But now, hey, 2 straight College World Series appearances, finished as the runner-up a couple years ago. Maybe he's more attractive. And obviously, he's an incredible coach. He's had as much success as anybody over the last 15 years. So certainly he could be appealing. But I just think right now A&M's in that kind of interview stage where, you got a couple of guys doing Zoom interviews every day. And by the end of the weekend, I think they'll want to make that decision. If I could talk about the portal real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
With them, obviously a lot of major names hit the portal. I'll just go ahead and read them. Jace Laviolette, Gavin Grahovic, Max Coffer, Jack Bell, Caden Kent, Ali Camarillo, Caden Sorrell, Hayden Schott, Isaac Morton, Caden Wilson, Jason Bowden, Jet Johnston. Now, here's the deal. Some of those guys are entering the portal for different reasons. Some of them are, saying, hey, this really sucks and I just want to find the other opportunity, or whoever has the biggest bag. Some guys are just saying, hey, I want to keep my options open, but I may return to A&M. A guy like Hayden Schott, right? Like, is he going to actually leave and try to pursue a bag, or, is he going to come back to A&M, a place that he's really enjoyed over this last year? And there's other guys like Ali Camarillo who will have a decision make on whether to go to the draft or not. And so not all of those guys are goners. Not all of those guys are going to Texas, right? Like Caden Kent, for example. Whether he comes back to A&M, I don't know, but there is absolutely no way he's going to Texas. Him and Jim Schlossnagle absolutely despised each other and did not get along. And I think Caden Kent, after this season, would have transferred if Jim Schlossnagle was still the head coach. I actually think the fact that Jim Schlossnagle no longer being the coach may actually help Caden Kent potentially come back. It's critical for A&M to get a coach in as soon as possible because of that portal deadline. But, some of these guys are ticking time bombs. They're getting offers every second of the day. They're getting people calling them every single day. The Caden Sorrells of the world, everyone in the country wants a Caden Sorrell, right? And so it's critical to bring a guy in. If you bring a guy in from a major place like North Carolina or, Virginia, you could be able to poach some guys from their roster because then, boom, 30-day window opens for them to enter the portal. So, A&M can get through this. They got to get rolling on it quick. I think they are. And I think that the fan base and the donors have never felt more inspired to donate and get involved with baseball. Not that there was ever an issue with that before. Of course, snap of the fingers, $80 million for the stadium renovation. But now it's on another level. They are ready to act and really invest in baseball. Nothing motivates Aggies more than anger and hatred toward the Longhorns. And so I think the next head coach is going to be set up really well. But these next week or two will be critical. One more guy I'm going to mention. I've heard a lot of great things about the pitching staff, mostly staying intact at A&M. Guys like Shane Sadeo are coming back. A guy like Josh Stewart is coming back. I think there's confidence in Justin Lamkin coming back. But the one guy that I'm looking at right now is Ryan Prager, the ace for the Aggies. I think there was a question like, what would he do at the end of the season? And I think a lot of people just assumed, hey, he's going to go to the draft. It's his third year. He's, really good, had a great season. That's not what I heard. I had heard that, hey, this guy's probably coming back at the end of this year. He's probably going to come back for another season. But now that Schlossnagle's gone, it's kind of making him rethink things. It's kind of like, okay, I don't know who the next head coach is. I did just have an awesome season. I was healthy all season. I did great. So I think that's up in the air. We'll see what he ultimately decides. But I think it's great that it's on the table and that, hey, priority number one for this next head coach is giving that guy a call and saying, hey, let's run it back another year. If he can bring him back, then, hey, man, this is a pretty dang good team next year. Obviously, Laviolette, Grahovic, Sorrell, those will be among the other big priorities. But you get Prager back, this pitching staff should be pretty good next year.
No doubt. And then you maybe supplement that with portal additions of your own, right? And guys that maybe you have ties to in the past. Want to wrap it up with this because I think it's important to, as I mentioned at the beginning, to not lose sight of what this A&M team accomplished, right? And you look at the run that they went on through the regional, through the super regional, and then in Omaha with wins over Florida, Kentucky, and just what they were able to accomplish, right? Beating Tennessee in that first game and getting to the doorstep of a national championship. With the injuries that they went through, obviously Braden Montgomery goes down, Shane Zadeo goes down, Jace Laviolette's battling a hamstring injury, Hayden Schott's battling a knee injury, Jackson Appel's kind of battling through some things as well. You were up there for that. Just what'd you kind of make of this run from this team and what they were able to accomplish? And as somebody who's been watching A&M baseball for a while, just the special season that this team was able to put together, but also overcome a lot of adversity.
Yeah, I think one of the more frustrating things about how this week has played out is it's taking the attention off of what these players were able to accomplish. What an unreal run. To start 9-0, first of all, in the postseason, that hadn't happened in like a decade since Vanderbilt did it. And, 7 outs away. And they had so many injuries. They had guys in slumps. Like Laviolette didn't play all that well down the stretch. Braden Montgomery obviously got hurt. You're down your number 2 pitcher. Hayden Schott had a torn meniscus, and he was batting like 400 in the postseason.
Wow.
Like that was amazing. What a baller that guy is. And, he had to put something on his knee that the trainer, Callie Swain, fixed up for him, where he had to poke hole in his pants, hole in his knee brace, and have this weird contraption kind of help with the blood flow to his knee because he's a designated hitter. He's sitting around for a lot of the time. And, he's having to do that between innings to, make sure he's good to go. And then he's coming up the plate and hitting base hit singles and just amazing. But, the other element to it is it's also amazing because of what this team dealt with from a distraction standpoint. Like I mentioned, around the SEC tournament, they're like, man, something's going on here. And in that final game, they all knew that guy was headed to Texas. And so to deal with that and to still win, I almost wonder if Schlossnagle was like, gosh, these guys keep winning. And I don't know if this is good. I kind of want to get out. I also think he may have thought that, hey, if I win the Natty, this fan base and these people can't be all that mad at me because, hey, I gave them a Natty and now I'm gone. But the fact that he didn't, it makes it even more painful that they lost in the championship by a run and then he leaves the next day. But, yeah, just overall, I mean, what an incredible job that guys like Justin Lamkin did stepping up in the absence of Sadeo and Caden Kent in the absence of Braden Montgomery coming in and filling in at second base. And obviously they rearranged their defense to kind of supplement that. But, an amazing run by this team. You could argue for sure it's the best team in Aggie baseball history. And, it's a shame that they won't get the attention they deserve. But certainly I think when you look back several years from now, you'll say, hey, man, one of the best teams in A&M history and one to remember for sure.
No doubt. Kudos to them, because it took this fan base on a fun ride. And I think that, you talk about, or fans kind of talk about, how do you get from spring ball to fall to football season? And this team took fans on an incredible ride over the last month or so, and deserve a lot of kudos for what they kind of went through, just from all the adversity that they fought through and everything that we've kind of covered today. And there's going to be plenty more. We're gonna have a lot more to cover over the next couple of days with the coaching search continuing on. I can again encourage everybody to head on over to GigEm247 and give that flash sale a try. 50% off an annual subscription to GigEm247. Definitely worth the price, and we'll take you through recruiting commitment season, which is coming up in July. It's going to be a busy month, and then into the fall. The season's right around the corner. SEC Media Days is like 3.5 weeks away. It's wild to think, but it's coming right around the corner. So thank you to everybody for joining us, Carter. Good to see you again, buddy. We'll do this again next week as we're both in town finally. And again, if you enjoy these videos, like and share the video, and enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks a lot.